Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. And right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, who is an Indianapolis Colts fan, paid his way into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, and sat on the bench for the 1981 National Championship game for about 34 minutes. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Wow. First off,
well, some days I build you up, right now, some days I tear you down.
All right. I didn't sit 34 minutes. I mean, Kitchell got into foul trouble 3 minutes into the game and never went back into the game. Hall of Fame, I don't care how you get in, you get in. That's all. Your plaque is on the wall. That's all that matters. What else did you rip me on?
I didn't rip you on anything. Those were all compliments, I thought.
Oh, okay. All right. Mike, how you doing? Just want to let you guys all know it's 75 and sunny in Los Angeles, same as yesterday.
As you let us know every day, and I don't really think every day
is
75 and sunny, but...
Yeah, we watched the parade.
Hey, but, really, what's the difference how hot it is? Because you're still stuck in that nursing home.
Shh, don't tell people that.
What the hell?
Who's our guest today?
Our guest today is a guy who's been friends with Steve Risley for a long time, so he's somebody I really admire. Used to work with the Golf Channel. Now he's a freelance sports reporter. Help me welcome to the show, Brian Hammons. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, don't hold my friendship with Riz against me, all right?
I didn't. I admired you for it because it shows intestinal fortitude.
Really, Hammons? My wife talked to your wife last night and said you were in bed on New Year's Eve before we were in bed. And we're 3 hours behind you. All right?
You guys are vampires. You guys stay up all night.
Well, I stay up all night because Risley calls me at all hours. Risley will call me at like 2 in the morning in my time and say, hey, it's only 11 here.
And the stupid thing is you answer the phone, you idiot.
Well, I have to, or you'll just keep calling me until I do.
I will. That's right.
All right. So what?
No, go ahead.
Every time I try to start the show, every time I finish the show, you interrupt me in the mid-sentence. But we are previewing the NFL playoff games today. The Wildcard games are this weekend. And I know Steve's looking forward to the games.
Yes, I am.
Really? That's all you got to say?
Right.
We're supposed to be entertaining.
Well,
yes, I am.
So what's your next question, Mike?
All right, let's just preview the games. I thought maybe you would say something witty because you told me, even though you're not the smartest guy, that you're witty and you make the show better because of that. I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, like I said, I'm feeling very blue. I'm feeling very blue about the playoffs right now. I'm feeling very blue, and I'm saying, Houston, you have a problem. I'm quoting. I'm feeling very blue. In Houston, I'm paraphrasing. You have a problem. Brian, what do we got going on in the playoffs?
Brian, this is the thing. Real quick, Brian. Risley obviously spent all weekend coming up with this line. We've done 3 shows this week. In all 3 shows, he's used the same damn line.
Maybe you should have a weekly show.
Yeah, but then we might miss that time in a week where he has a good thought. All right, we've got an AFC South rematch. The Texans hold a 37-34 win in Week 4 over Indianapolis. The Colts took the Week 14 matchup 24-21, so we're at a 1-1 split. How do you see this game, Brian? What do you think the keys to this game are?
Well, the Colts weren't very good in Week 4. They've really come a long way since then, and if you remember, that's the game that they went for it on 4th and 4 around midfield instead of punting late in the overtime that probably could have resulted in a tie, which would have made them division champions right now. But anyway, the Colts weren't very good then. Now they're really good. They go down there, they beat them on their home field later in the season. I like the Colts in this game. And, Ryan Kelly hasn't played the last couple of weeks because of injury. Their center. Hopefully he's back this week and they'll be able to run the ball. They ran the ball great last week against Tennessee. I just think the Colts are playing really well. They've won 9 of their last 10 since starting 1-5, and I agree with Riz. Houston, you got a problem because the boys in blue are coming south.
All right, it's good that neither one of you are homers too. But let's see. My concern here is Ryan Kelly at center. My other concern is T.Y. Hilton who was favoring his ankle this last week. We assume with another week to get ready, he'll be even more prepared. Do injuries concern you at all, Steve?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. You asked Steve,
you can go ahead. You'll probably have something better to say anyway.
Yeah,
I'm not used to sharing the microphone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. No, you're the guest.
Well, T.Y. Hilton does concern me. He hasn't practiced in 3 weeks. He hasn't practiced. He went and killed who they beat 2 weeks ago, Steve? The Giants. Killed the Giants and didn't practice all week. Didn't practice this week. Didn't practice all week leading up to the Tennessee game and went down there. And obviously he wasn't 100%, but came up with a couple of big catches. And he just destroys Houston, but I'm not sure if he's going to be 100% or close, even anywhere close to it. So that is a concern. It's not like they've got many other weapons in the wideout position besides T.Y. Hilton. So, yes, injuries concern me.
All right, Steve. So what are your concerns, and what do you think is the key to this game?
I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill because Hilton has probably had 3 of the best games of his
You know what? I don't think – this is the thing, Steve. Steve, you may be making a mountain out of a molehill, but the other concern is this. It's possible that the ankle is getting worse because he looked like he favored it more this last week than he did the week before.
And he still made big plays. I mean,
against the Tennessee Titans.
T.Y. Hilton's a gamer.
Against the Tennessee Titans.
He's a gamer. Well, I don't care who you're playing. You still got to run the routes, and you got to play. You got to play. He runs out of bounds. We talked about this the other day, how fast he gets out of bounds and avoids contact more than any receiver I've ever seen in the NFL. And I think that he's had great games against New York, against Dallas, and against Tennessee. Andrew is finding him. He's a target, and he's making the plays when the ball's delivered. And I would not have any concern about T.Y. Hilton playing in this game. I'd have concern about his contract next year because it will cut into the $118 million of salary cap we have. I got a feeling, but I wouldn't worry about T.Y. Hilton.
All right, you look at the quarterback matchups. You got Deshaun Watson, you got Andrew Luck. Deshaun Watson threw 7 picks first 6 games. Since then, he's only thrown 2. Andrew Luck, I think, started off a little slow, but he was still playing well, but he wasn't really throwing the ball down the field. Since then, though, I think he solidified himself as the comeback player of the year. Do you think Luck has a huge advantage over Watson, Brian? Because I think he does, just because I think Luck's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football.
I think he has an advantage over Watson, but Watson is a beast as far as trying to defend him. I mean, he just brings obviously the running element into play, and it's hard to defend a guy like that. But the Colts have been really, really good defensively, so that's been the biggest surprise for me. But as far as Andrew goes, he wasn't real good. He didn't throw the ball downfield early in the season for 2 reasons. One, he didn't have Anthony Costanzo on the offensive line, and that line wasn't very good without Costanzo. They had to piecemeal a line together, so he had to get rid of the ball quickly. Plus, his arm strength is coming back. It's back now. Early in the season, I don't know if you remember, but they brought in Jacoby Brissett to throw a Hail Mary in one game.
Yeah.
And that just told you, and you could see that the velocity just wasn't there with Luck. Well, it's back now, and it has been since about mid-season, and there's no issue at all with his arm, and he's got a good offensive line. He's able to hold on to the ball long enough to throw it downfield. So I would give Luck the edge, but it's not a huge edge because I really like Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and the thing about Watson, Steve, is you watch him. He beats Alabama in the national championship game with a last-minute drive. He's a clutch player.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, no, I mean, Houston's very dangerous. I mean, they're well coached, and I mean, I don't think the Colts come away with a win. Honestly, I just think that it's playoff time, and I think that city's going to rise to the occasion, and that team's going to rise to the occasion. We're relying on everybody for the Colts. I mean, is Ryan Kelly going to be back? Is our offensive line going to hold? Is Matt going to play well? Is T.Y. healthy? We have a lot of questions with the Colts, and I think that right now, on paper, Houston is more solid than we are. I just think we're hotter than they are right now. It's going to be a great game to watch.
All right, now the thing that would concern me the most with Houston, and I think this is the key to the game, the exact key that will decide what happens, is Deshaun Watson's been sacked, or Houston's allowed 62 sacks this year. And is the Colts' defensive line and linebackers good enough to get that much pressure on him? I didn't see the earlier two games in the year. The earlier two games, Brian, were these games where the Colts were on Watson, or did Watson have time to throw?
No, they pressured Watson pretty well. But the only time that the Colts really get pressure consistently is when they blitz. And that's, I don't know if you can blitz Deshaun Watson that much or not. You're the defensive coordinator. You can answer that question. But that's really they have to schematically get after people to put pressure on the quarterback, because they don't have the Dwight Freeney anymore, and they don't have Robert Mathis anymore. So they've got some good young players, but they still don't have that star pass rusher. So they've got to get after you schematically to put pressure on Deshaun Watson. Now, can you blitz him consistently? That I don't know.
All right, Steve, who you like in this one? Give us a score. Yeah. You've already gave us two different picks earlier, so I'm waiting to see what your final pick is.
My heart says Colts. My brain says Houston wins this game.
So you're picking Houston? Because I don't know, because your brain kind of worries me sometimes.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Sadly, it does. Yeah. No, I think Houston wins this game. I think Colts, they're playing on borrowed time. They're a great team, but I think they're so fragile. Like Brian has said, everybody said, I think if there was a healthy game for both teams, we'd be fine, but I don't think we're healthy. So right. I think Houston moves on.
All right, Brian, what do you think?
No, I think the Colts win. I think the offensive line has been really good. Now they've got a huge challenge this week, obviously with Clowney and J.J. Watt. But the offensive line has kept Andrew Luck pretty clean all season, and if you give him time, he's been picking people apart. And if they can run it like they have been with Marlon Mack, he's been really good. I think the Colts are going to win a close game.
All right. I think this game's a toss-up. I think it's a 3-point game either way. I think the difference is going to be this. If you have to blitz a quarterback like Deshaun Watson to get to him, I don't think you're going to beat him. Because the problem is when you blitz, he's a smart kid. If you watch the final drive against Alabama, they tried to blitz him. He threw the ball where the blitz was coming, and he tore him up. Now, this is not Alabama. No matter what anybody thinks, Alabama could not get close to beating any team in the NFL. But the point is this. Under pressure, he's very good. I think with me, Deshaun Watson, especially with his offensive line, to beat them, the best way to do it is to not have to blitz and just let your front three or your front four get after the Houston defensive line or Houston offensive line. I don't think the Colts have the defensive linemen to do that. I think that's going to be in the difference at the end of this game. I like the Texans by a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if the Colts win just because Andrew Luck's that good, though. So that's my pick on that one. Next up, and Steve loves the Dallas Cowboys. I didn't know if you knew that or not, Brian, but we got a guy named Anthony Servino that comes on every Monday after games. And, at one point he was mad because Anthony was a Cowboys fan, but now he's got a little man crush on Anthony. And he actually cheers for the Cowboys, and it's really sickening.
I don't think that's allowed, is it?
I didn't think it was.
Dallas is the most dangerous team in the NFL right now. I think they're incredibly talented. They're undercoached. And I think that if you catch them on a day when they're all clicking, you're not going to beat them. And right now they're playing good football. I mean, they blew up against the Colts. I get it. We blew up against Jacksonville. I get it. You're going to have a bad game, but I think in the playoffs, Dallas is very dangerous. That's my comment.
So you
who do they have who this week? Philadelphia?
No, Dallas is playing Seattle. Dallas is at home. And
they're playing at home.
Steve claims that a
Jerry
team
Jones Hall.
This is the thing. Steve claims that a team is very dangerous even though they're poorly coached. I don't think you can have a very dangerous team that's poorly coached.
I think you give their quarterback too much credit. I think if you can stop their run game and make him beat you, you're going to beat the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, and the key is this.
Ezekiel Elliott?
No.
Ezekiel Elliott? Did he say any more?
No, the quarterback. The quarterback is Dak Prescott, if you didn't know, Steve.
Stop the running back, you know.
Oh, yeah, if you can stop the running back. But the thing is this, even if you don't stop the running back, the Dallas Cowboys, 3 years ago, Dak Prescott was a bad man because he had the best offensive line in football, and he had time to get people open to throw them the ball. As we have repeatedly said on this show, Steve, what's the one thing Dak Prescott can't do? He cannot throw a receiver open. That is his one drawback. He is a quarterback who I would still take above Jared Goff or Carson Wentz because I don't think either one of them are very good. But Dak Prescott doesn't throw people open. And his offensive line's not going to give him the time to do this. And I think what people are missing is this. I think when you look at this game, I think the key is Seattle's running game. I mean, they've got Carson. They've got a couple really good running backs. With Dallas, like I said, when you play Dallas, you take away Ezekiel Elliott or you at least contain him, and you're going to beat them, Steve. And when I look at this game, Jason Garrett's a poor football coach. You tell me this team is dangerous, but I don't think you can have a dangerous team with a average to below average offensive line, and I don't think you can have a dangerous team with an average to below average head coach.
All right. Well, Brian, your thoughts?
No, I would agree with that because, you know, the Colts, the way they beat him, they shut down Ezekiel Elliott. They held him under 100 yards. I think he had 60-some yards, and they shut him out. And if you can, like you said, contain him, I like Seattle in this game. I really do. They're playing really well.
How about this, Steve? Let's do it like this. At quarterback, would you rather have Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson.
At head coach. Hold on.
Russell Wilson should probably be MVP of the league.
Hey, at head coach.
He's probably MVP. He won't get it.
Coach, would you rather have Jason Garrett or Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll.
So, with that being said, how in the hell could you call Dallas the most dangerous team? To me, the most dangerous team is the team with Russell Wilson. Because Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck, under the age of 30, they're the best two quarterbacks in the NFL. And Pete Carroll has won a Super Bowl. He goes to the playoffs almost every year except for last year. Mm-hmm. And Jason Garrett is a guy that, you know, he usually doesn't get to the playoffs. And when he does, he loses. So, I don't know, Steve. Make a better case, please.
No, I can't. I'm just saying they want that team is stacked full of talent, and everywhere else they fail miserably, except that's just a very talent-laden football team. That scares me. When you got that kind of talent, it's kind of like Duke basketball. You know, the best college team money can buy is Duke basketball. You know, and it's kind of how Dallas is. And they have tremendous amount of talent, and if they
wait a second. Duke has more talent than everybody else. Dallas doesn't. Dallas isn't even close. Dallas has got a quarterback that's probably in the top half of the league. They've got a top 2 or 3 running back. They've got a mediocre defensive line. They have a slightly above average defensive line, mediocre offensive line. They've got linebackers that are pretty good, and they've got DBs that are pretty good. That's not the best roster in the NFL.
And they've got a defensive lineman who gave my son the worst concussion he's ever gotten in his life.
Yeah. What's your point? You know what? You know, the more I think of this, you coached Randy Gregory in basketball, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he just took that out on Ross. Maybe you just pissed him off.
I'm taking Dallas in this game. Brian, who are you picking?
I got Seattle.
I think Seattle wins the game. I think it'll be a close game. I think Dallas does have talent. I think Ezekiel Elliott will run for 100. But I think for them to win, he's got to run for 100 or 50 or more. But, all right, next up, we've got the game that I think is the most interesting to me. The Baltimore Ravens will host the Los Angeles Chargers. When you look at this, Brian, what do you think the key is here?
Well, I think the Ravens, you talk about dangerous teams, I think the Ravens are because of their defense. And they play old school smash mouth outside football. And I think Baltimore's a team to watch in the playoffs.
Steve?
I would agree with Brian. I mean, I'm not going to repeat what he said. I agree entirely with Brian.
Okay. I don't agree because I think Lamar Jackson's their quarterback, and I think in the end that's going to bite them in the ass the first time they coach a defense that is smart enough to take that away. He's a guy that can't even throw for 200 yards. I don't think their running backs are that good. I don't think the offensive line's that good. I think the defense is great. I think when you look at the Chargers, the Ravens shut the Chargers down. The Chargers didn't have Melvin Gordon, number one. On top of that, the defense that they ran specifically to stop them, where they were running show coverage, cover 2, cover 3, they're not going to be able to do that again and beat Phillip Rivers. I don't think they're going to be able to come up with something else to beat Rivers. I think that they shot their wad in that first game, and I think they're going to have a hard time doing anything with that. My question is, how are the Chargers going to defend Lamar Jackson? What's your take on Lamar Jackson, Brian?
I think he's really good right now, but he's going to end up getting hurt and be like RG3. He can't survive in the NFL being a running quarterback. But that doesn't mean he can't survive the next few games and have a good postseason. My question to you, though, is has Phillip Rivers ever won in cold weather?
Sure he has. He's won a lot of playoff games. He's won a lot of regular season games. I'm sure he's played in Cincinnati in November.
I just don't know.
Cincinnati's ass, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the conditions are going to be in Baltimore this weekend, but that's one thing to keep an eye on. I mean, it's obviously the worse the conditions, the more I think it favors Baltimore.
Yeah, I would agree with that since they're a running team that's really not looking to throw the ball. Steve, what's your take on Lamar Jackson?
He's improved every week, Mike. I mean, he's gotten better, and I was not a fan of his because I'm all about, pro-style quarterbacks, pocket passers, that step back like Luck or Brady or guys just, play their position, and he plays it differently, and he plays it better differently than anybody I've seen, along with Deshaun Watson. I mean, those two guys are the new prototype quarterbacks coming up.
No, they're
not.
I think they're not. There's not one quarterback like that that's been successful.
Well, they're getting successful.
They're not. Where are they getting? Who played the Super Bowl last year? Who were the quarterbacks in the championship game last year? You're having success in the regular season.
Okay.
Yeah, but you said that there are quarterbacks like him that are starting to take over. Who are those guys?
I think that he and Deshaun Watson are two guys.
Deshaun Watson is not a runner. Deshaun Watson is a guy that runs when he has to. Unfortunately for him, as bad as his offensive line is, he has to a lot. Lamar Jackson, the difference is this. Deshaun Watson's usually not throwing or running unless everything's falling apart or he gets about 3 into his progression and there's nothing there. Lamar Jackson's a guy that they're going to run a route. He's got one option. If that option's not open, he might look at a second, but other than that, he's running. And that historically has not worked in the NFL, and it hasn't worked for a reason. And part of that reason Brian already brought up, because you can't make a living being a running quarterback in the NFL. If you look at the guys when we were growing up that were the best running quarterbacks, Fran Tarkenton never won a Super Bowl. John Elway did when he stopped running. Steve Young did when he stopped running, unless he absolutely had to. Randall Cunningham was 10 times the athlete, player, thrower, and runner that Lamar Jackson is. But Randall Cunningham didn't win anything until he got older. When he got older, he becomes the NFL MVP because he stays in the pocket and he throws the ball. There's a way to win, and in the NFL, with the guys the size and as violent and physical as they are, your quarterback running the ball for 150 yards a game is only going to work for so long. And I'll make this claim. I think the Ravens right now, I would pick to win this game if Joe Flacco was starting. And I know everybody says they hate Joe Flacco, but in the playoffs over the last decade, Joe Flacco hadn't played a bad playoff game.
Okay.
Am I nuts there, Brian?
No, I like your points. I like your points. Now, you mentioned those guys that would won when they stopped running, but all those guys could throw. And I haven't been convinced that Lamar Jackson can throw.
He has
at
a
all.
big arm, but he's not accurate because his feet do not move with his body. And what that means is when you're setting up to throw the ball, and then all of a sudden you got to throw over here to this guy to the right instead, his upper body is ahead of his feet, which leads to him to throw the ball behind a wide receiver or in front of the wide receiver. His feet do not move with the rest of his body. And he's got really quick feet, but that tells me that in his brain, everything is moving so fast that he can't keep up with it. And I still think this, and me and Steve have talked about this on a couple shows, the best way to defend him is not to rush him. If I'm the Chargers and I'm playing him, I take my defensive ends, my defensive tackles, I go about 2 yards upfield, and then I stand there with my arms up in the air. And I make him beat me throwing the ball. I take away all rush lanes and just say, Lamar, if you can throw for 350 yards, you can beat me.
Sounds like a good game plan to me.
It did to me, too.
I think Baltimore's a team that's played its way into the playoffs. They're well coached. They're streaking right now, playing great defense, and I still think defense contributes more than anything to winning championships. I'm not going to say defense wins championships.
Me too. Now, do you really think that the Chargers' defense is that bad, though?
I think the Chargers are predicated on offense with Rivers. I think they're predicated.
I don't think they are.
They win by their offense.
I think when I watch this team, you look at the secondary with Derwin James, Denzel Perryman at linebacker, you got Bosa and those guys up front. This is a really good defensive team. And the reason I like the Chargers in this game is because when you look at them, the Chargers, I think, are significantly better than the Ravens on offense because they have Phillip Rivers. On defense, I think the Ravens are better than the Chargers, but not by that much. So
Rivers has shown mediocrity in the last couple of games.
Rivers can show mediocrity, but he's not Lamar Jackson.
All right. Okay. Where's the game at?
It's in Baltimore.
Baltimore.
It's going to be 53 degrees and partly sunny, so I don't think weather will be that big of a deal.
Mike, who's your pick?
I got the Chargers to win the game.
I got the Ravens. Brian?
I'm going to go with Baltimore in this game because of their defense. They're playing at home, and then they lose the next round. But I think they'll beat the Chargers.
Yeah. All right. But you got to admit, I made you think about it, though, before you did it. Right, Brian?
You bring up some good points.
Let's see. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. My biggest question, does anybody know about Nick Foles and if he's playing for sure or not? I'd assume he is.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. It's just bruised ribs, and they expect him to be at practice all week and be 100%.
All right. So what's your first take on this, Brian? What do you think is the key to this game?
Well, I like Chicago. I mean, their defense has been really, really good. Trubisky has been solid. I think the Bears are a team that could go a long way in this postseason.
All right, Steve.
I agree with Brian. I think the Bears are in a Super Bowl. I think they're the best team in the NFC.
Wait a second, Steve. Steve, at the start of the year. No, you're going to hear me out because you mocked me at the start of the year when I said the Bears would win the NFC North. You and Anthony Servino made fun of me.
Yeah, and I'm an idiot. I admit I'm an idiot, Brian.
Okay.
I get it. I'm changing.
I just wanted to bring it up.
In this country, in democracy, you're allowed to change your vote and your mind. I'm changing my mind. The Bears right now are going to be in the Super Bowl because they play solid football. They're not – and you don't like Trubisky, I know. I think he's a great blue-collar quarterback. He's like Foles.
He runs too much. He's not like Foles. He runs. He's a runner.
Well, but, I still think that's an asset. And I watched a lot of college football yesterday. And
it's an asset in college football, Steve. It really is. But it's not in the NFL. It's an asset if you do it like Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck. I mean, those guys can run when they have to run.
So, all right. Are you done yet?
Yeah, go ahead. Now you know what I feel like. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the Bears. I think the Bears are probably going to play themselves into the Super Bowl. And I think they got a great coach. They have the coach of the year. I think Nagy will be coach of the year. He should be if he's not. I mean, to turn that program around. They're playing in Chicago, which God knows what the weather is going to be like in Chicago. What's the forecast in Chicago this weekend?
I don't know.
Well, if it's like it is here, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be
fine through most of the Midwest and East. Most of it's showing in the 40s or 50s. I think. Hold on, I think Philadelphia is
is grasping at straws. They have a quarterback situation there. You don't want to admit it. They have to deal with what they're going to do with their quarterback situation. The team is probably a little funky over all this because some people like Wentz, some people like Foles. The pressure on them to repeat. They barely made the playoffs. I think they scabbed their way into it, and they go to Chicago and they get drilled.
Well, I think this. I don't think there's any way to get drilled. But when you look at this, over the last 3 weeks, Nick Foles broke the Eagles' franchise record for passing yards in a win over the Texans. He beat the 11-2 Rams. And then he tied the NFL record for most consecutive completions in a win over the Redskins. The thing that's scary to me, even against the Bears defense, if I'm the Bears, Brian, is the fact that Nick Foles may be one of the greatest quarterbacks, third down quarterbacks I've ever seen. And the stuff he pulls out of his ass is kind of amazing a lot of the times. You watch the Rams game, I think they converted like 80% of their third downs. So he's a guy that you've got to play all 3 downs to get off the field. I think Foles makes the Eagles really dangerous. I think I'm leaning towards the Bears. But the Eagles, the thing that worries me about the Eagles is their secondary. I think their secondary is terrible. But what's your take on this, Brian?
This is a little bit off topic, but I feel bad for Nick Foles because that rib injury that he got last week cost him $1 million.
Yeah.
Because he had to play, 37% of the snaps this year, and he missed it by 4 snaps or something because he had to leave the game.
Now, I'll tell you this, Brian. There you know that he's got enough money, though, because you couldn't drag my ass off that field under those situations.
No kidding. I mean, he obviously, had he known that he was 4 snaps away, I think he would have seen him crawl back on. But I like Nick Foles. And I think Riz was right. I think they got a little bit of a quarterback controversy when camp starts next year because Foles has outplayed Wentz.
Well, don't you think the quarterback controversies are just because of how much money they've paid Carson Wentz?
Absolutely. And that, you see that a lot of times where, hey, he's our first-round pick. We're paying him a boatload of money. He's got to be our guy, because Foles is a lot cheaper. But, if you just go by who's playing better and who's winning games, you got to give Nick Foles a serious look.
Well, I think Foles' contract's up after this year, too. So to be able to keep Foles, you're going to have to pay him a ton of money also.
I still think being a backup quarterback's the greatest job in all of sports. Pat the starter on the butt. Yeah, Pat the starter
but you know what?
Butt,
if I can get a 7-year contract at $130 million, that's a pretty good job, too. I can always get
I'm not sure he's going to get that. But he's going to get paid if he wants to go somewhere else and be a starter.
Oh, I think he could get $15 or $20 million a year. They gave it to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that's true.
There's rocket surgery going on right there. Brian, what does Nick Foles do? Does he go to Jacksonville? Does he go to some other team or another fledgling team? Here's a question. Does New England go get Nick Foles? Because, Brady's kind of ready to walk out of there, I would think, after this year. Does Foles become a very big commodity, Brian?
Is he?
Dallas?
Is he?
Down in Denver? Denver needs quarterback?
Is he a free agent after this year?
I'm fairly sure that he signed a 1-year contract.
I'm pretty sure he is. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
I would imagine John Elway would certainly give him a serious look. Jacksonville, that's another spot that.
Yeah. Hey, remember this though. Denver paid out the ass for Case Keenum.
Yeah, that's true.
So the problem is, if you've got a starting quarterback like a Tom Brady or a Case Keenum, we're already making that much money. It makes it really hard to tie up probably 20% of your roster money or a quarter of it in 2 quarterbacks.
That's a good point. Yeah. So, Brian, what's your take? Look at New England. You got to figure. I still think New England's going to end up in a Super Bowl for the AFC. I just think the Brady Belichick combination, 1 more year, too good, and I think they hang it up after this year. I think Brady.
I don't know.
I think they do. Well, yeah, I think if they don't hang it up, they start going down. They start diminishing their genre or whatever the word.
What makes you think that from what you've seen this year? Because the thing that stands out to me, Brady has performed fine. Brady does not have the players around him that he has in the past. And Brady is still, 26 touchdowns, 8 or 9 interceptions? No. But the thing is this, with that team, with Bill Belichick, you sign 1 or 2 free agents, you have a really good draft, hell, they might be better than what they were last year. Because that's what they do.
They might be, you're right.
I mean, they're not that far.
I mean, how long can you do this?
Well, the thing is this, he's 41 years old, and maybe nobody's ever done it this long at this high a pace, but he's a guy I'm not writing off until he says he's done, because...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's just... And the way quarterbacks are protected these days, I mean, you're going to see quarterbacks, I think, playing longer than we've seen in years past, because you can't hit them.
Well, you're already seeing it now. I mean, Drew Brees is right around 40. Right. Ben Roethlisberger's getting up there.
Hey, let's finish this up. The last game. What's the last game we decided?
The Eagles and the Bears. I'm going to pick the Bears.
I got Bears.
I got Bears.
I got the Bears for their defense, and they're playing at home.
But I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Foles fires some rockets out his ass and wins.
Right. Well, not surprised me either. Yeah. I mean, he's like Luck. I mean, you just don't know what. I mean, if Luck plays like he's played the last 3 games, Colts win. But if Foles plays like he's playing, then I think Philadelphia's a great chance, a great team. Brian, NFL right now. Let me ask you another question. We're done with the picks. They are. I feel that I call it the corked ball rule, or the corked bat rule, or the juice ball rule. Do you think the NFL is over-protecting offensive players and quarterbacks to try and run the score up, try to get more exciting games in the NFL, so more people are going to come back into the seats and watch the games?
If they think offense is going to draw more people into the stands, maybe. But I did see a stat last week that I thought was interesting, that 73%, I think it was that high, 67 or 73, something like that, 73% of the people that they surveyed would rather watch an NFL game at home than go to the game. And I'm one of those, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
So if that's what they're trying to do, then maybe. But I think the way they're protecting the quarterbacks and the offensive play, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, guys are breathing on a quarterback and they're getting the flag thrown. And I'll say this too: the officiating in the National Football League is abysmal. It's absolutely horrible. But it's worse now than I think that it's ever been.
I don't know. I think the worst it ever was in the 1980s. But I also think this. I think there's a lot to be said for this. I think the NFL was at its zenith in the 1980s, and that was mainly because of the violence. It was the 85 Bears defense, the 86 Giants defense. People want to see violence. And I don't think the NFL is doing this to get higher scoring games to get people to watch. I think what they're doing is they're trying to make it look like they're trying to make it safe for the players. That's all they're doing, because they don't care. But the thing is this. What they've done with old retired players is basically let them die without compensating them, even when they lost a lawsuit to them. And I think they just try to make that all go away. I think they try to make people think that they care about former players. They obviously don't care about former players, but it's just like the Ray Rice incident. You know, once you got video on it and people get mad at them, they do something. So I think right now people see what's happening to these guys. And the perfect example is I got a friend, Joe Kelly, that played for the Bengals. He played in the NFL for 12 years. He had and the Washington Huskies wore this guy's jersey number on the back of their helmets at the Rose Bowl yesterday. And his name was, I think, Rod Johnson. I'm not sure, but he played 5 years in the NFL. And they found out he had CTE. And the NFL was supposed to start paying his medical bills because he only played 4 or 5 years in the NFL at minimum in the 1980s. So he wasn't a rich man. And the NFL, even though the doctors said it was because of CTE, they denied his claim, which meant that his wife and them were going to have to pay for the insurance and pay for all his medical care. He shot himself in the heart the next day. And he left a note saying that he wanted them to check his brain. And he wanted the NFL to pay for this, and he didn't want to be a drain on his family. And I know you got people that say, well, you know what you were getting into. They didn't back then. I mean, come on, they give you some smelling salts and tell you you're all right. And I think the NFL is trying to overcompensate because of what they've done. And the NHL still says that head trauma doesn't cause CTE. And I think the NFL is just trying to cover their ass. I think they're trying to go out of their way to show everybody that they're trying to make the game safer. I think that they tried to put more points on the board. It was more glaring in 1975, 78, right around that time, where they went with the Mel Blount rule, which meant that once you were past 5 yards, you couldn't touch the wide receiver, because that's what changed the game. That I think that was in 78. And then all of a sudden, you see quarterbacks like Kenny Anderson completing 65, 70% of their passes, Joe Montana doing it. Now everybody does it. And I think the thing that opened up the game was that rule, and then the fact that offensive linemen in the mid-'70s were allowed to start using their hands, where before they'd have to double wing block. I don't think anything's ever been done to loosen the game up scoring-wise more than it was then. I don't think this is about that.
I think part of what they're doing now is, and I get their reasoning, it does nobody any good when your star franchise quarterback is out for the year. I mean, we see what happens when Andrew Luck goes down. We see what happens when these stars go down. Those are the stars of the NFL. Very few people would recognize anybody but their starting quarterback in their hometown if they saw him in the airport.
Yeah, except for the Eagles.
They want to protect. They want to protect those stars, and I get that, but it's just gone a little bit too far with the way they're protecting the quarterbacks.
Brian, let me ask you a question. This is kind of a little bit of defense for the referees. It seems to me that the owners get together every year in Arizona or wherever the heck they meet, and they change rules. And, I mean, do the referees really, because it seems like, do the referees know the rules? I mean, I know they know them but do they get the rules and are they have the ability to apply the rules? Because I see more instant replay crap going on every day, and I hate instant replay. I wish they just would abolish it entirely. Mental mistakes on referees' part are part of the game. That's just, when I played basketball, we didn't have instant replay, and we just, you got a bad call, you move on. Now we go 5 minutes into it. You go 5 minutes into it, and you're sitting there reviewing it, and it's like, does the NFL just change the rules too much, too quick, too fast?
No, I like replay. They could tweak it obviously and make it better, but I think what the officiating issue is they've had a lot of the older officials have retired in the last few years, and they really haven't done a nice job as far as replacing them. They don't really have a pipeline to replace these guys that have been doing it for 25 and 30 years. And there's just a lot of inexperienced, and I've heard this from NFL officials that are friends of mine, that there's just not a lot of experience out there. And that's hurt the NFL officiating, but it's been abysmal. I mean, it's been brutal.
Yeah, and as bad as that officiating is, Steve, imagine how bad it is if they can't overturn calls in New York.
Right. No, I know. I see both sides of the fence. I'm just saying,
put it like this. If
game.
there would have been instant replay, we'd had Super Bowl winners that were changed. I mean, 1977, was it Rob Lidle gets tackled a yard and a half short of the goal line. They give him a touchdown against Oakland. They win the game. They go to the Super Bowl. 79, you had, what was it, Renfro at the back of the end zone? Yeah, I mean, put it like this. If there's no replay and Andrew Luck completes a pass at the back of the end zone for the Colts to win the Super Bowl, but the official calls him out of bounds, you'll want an instant replay.
Yeah. I see both sides of the fence there. So enough said. All right. Okay. We're done with football, right? Brian, you're coming up on doing Basketball Day in Indiana. The show you do with Fox Sports every year. And you're excellent at it. It's very fun to watch. You sit there. Are you at Pan Am Plaza again?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are you at Pan Am Plaza sitting out in the freezing cold again?
No. That was the first year we froze our tail off. It was below zero. We're inside Bankers Life Fieldhouse again this year.
You're in Bankers Life. Okay. Let's start talking a little bit of basketball. Mike, you okay with that? We're done with football?
I don't care. It's your show, Steve.
All right.
It's your world. I just live in it.
There you go. Let me ask you the first question. Talking about Steve Alford, Brian, what's the take back in Indiana on Steve Alford? What happens? What's going on there back in Indiana?
Well, nobody's really.
I'm here.
Nobody's really.
Here. Nobody gives a damn.
Nobody's really talking about it here. Nobody's really talking about it here either. I mean, there's been an article saying that he was fired and and whatnot. But I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me to see Steve move back here to Indiana. I know he has property here and a lake house and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't know what's next for Steve Alford. He got a $4.5 million buyout from UCLA. I think, and I like Steve. I've always liked Steve. I think he got a bit of a raw deal at UCLA. The expectations out there are unrealistic considering where that program is. They still don't charter. They didn't have a practice facility until this year. When I was out there a couple of years ago, you and I went to a practice.
Yeah,
they had to share Pauley Pavilion for practice time with volleyball teams. I mean, it was ridiculous. So that program, and he was never really accepted out there because he wasn't a UCLA guy. He went to the Sweet 16, 3 times? And the year that we went out there, at the end of that season, he lost 4 players to the NBA. Well, there aren't many coaches that are going to survive that, unless you're Kentucky and you just got 4 more NBA players coming in the next year. So he got a bit of a raw deal.
Yeah, he lost Ed Schilling, who was a master recruiter. And
right.
Schilling's a great recruiter. He's now at Indiana. He recruited Wilkes to come out there to play. He had Trayvon Blewett for a while, and then that was how Schilling got out there because Schilling was coaching Park Tudor when Blewett was playing for him, and then Blewett backed out of it after they'd already signed Schilling to a contract to coach. But Ed was a great recruiter. He's doing great for Indiana. So so now we're hearing all these names. What do you think about UCLA, Brian? Tino? I mean, it's a good fit. It's perfect for this.
I saw Dick Vitale. Dick Vitale went on Twitter last night and encouraging all UCLA fans to call the athletic director and hire Rick Pitino. And I think he's pretty much damn good. Yeah, but I saw somebody comment, the hookers are a lot better looking in L.A. than they are in Louisville.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, but they cost a lot more.
Why, yes, they are.
Yeah, they do.
I'm watching Let's Make a Deal right now. The model girl who's on Let's Make a Deal is gorgeous. I don't even know who she is. But
well, let's get off of that. Go watch Pornhub later. The guy that stands out to me that I think would be perfect would be Arizona State's coach, Bobby Hurley.
Hurley or Hoiberg?
Hey, Bobby Hurley's done a great job at Arizona State.
I like Fred Hoiberg because as Steve knows, it's more of a professional atmosphere out there. It's a different atmosphere going to games out there. It's not like a college atmosphere at all. And Fred Hoiberg, did a great job at Iowa State. With the Chicago Bulls, with the profession, he'll do a good job attracting players because of his NBA background. I think that'd be a terrific hire if they hired Fred Hoiberg.
Okay, I like that. Okay, back to Alford. What do you see, Brian? ESPN or Butler? I think he'd be a great fit at Butler.
Butler has a coach.
Yeah.
And he's doing a good job.
For now.
Hey, how about this? What about Billy Donovan?
I keep hearing that he would leave the NBA to go to the right situation, and it'd be a good hire. No, it wouldn't be, because from what he had at Florida, facilities-wise and program-wise, it doesn't compare to what UCLA doesn't compare to what he had at Florida.
Yeah, and there's not the pressure at Florida that there is at UCLA, because everybody's more worried about firing the football coach at Florida than they are the basketball coach.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that would be a good situation for him. It's just hard for coaches to turn down, and this is what happened to Steve. He's doing a good job at New Mexico, I think he was making as much money at New Mexico as he was making at UCLA. But it's hard to turn down those 4 letters. When UCLA comes calling, it's hard to turn them down until you go out there and you see what kind of program you're really dealing with.
I will tell you this: Kelvin Sampson mentioned
living out here in Los Angeles, UCLA has nowhere the impact on society that Indiana or Purdue or Kentucky or Duke or North Carolina has in their environments. And nobody cares. I mean,
here's a good example.
Throwing around Steve Alford's name, and they go, "Who? What? Oh yeah, UCLA coach. Oh yeah. They still playing? You know, I mean, it was really wild coming out here. We know what.
Steve, remember when we went to the game a couple of years ago? We went to see UCLA and USC, arch rivals. Arch rivals. They're 13 miles apart. It wasn't sold out. People were sitting on their hands the entire game, and USC didn't even bring their cheerleaders. Right. I mean, it was unbelievable to me. But it's just okay. Here we are watching a basketball game. It's not like watching Carolina and Duke or IU and Purdue or any of those great rivals. Those two are arch rivals, 13 miles apart, and they couldn't sell the place out. So it's a different atmosphere out there.
Yeah, it is. I'm living here, so I get it. Okay, Brian, Mike, you want to take a break? Because we're going to talk PGA golf here.
Okay, if you don't want me to stay on the show, I'll go off, Steve.
No, stay on the show.
No, Steve, no. That's all right. I will go off, and I will do whatever I would do. No, don't put this on me, Steve. Don't put this on. Hey, 3 years ago I owned this, and now I talked to Steve Risley one time, and before you know it, now he's just leaving me off of shows. But I'll come back at the end of the show, Steve. You just text me, and I'll be there whenever you need me, all right?
Just stay here. Wait.
No, I'm not staying. I'm going now because I have to pee anyway.
So I guess when you have a podcast, there are no time constraints. You just go as long as you want.
No,
right?
there are not. You just keep
if there were time. Could you imagine Risley constrained to 30 minutes?
It wouldn't work. No,
I'd never get
it's easy. You just cut off the microphone.
Shut over. Love to hear myself talk. That's fine.
A good idea because
Brian,
I could
best team
cut
in
that
college
off.
basketball right now. Brian, Mike, stay on the line, please.
No.
Brian, who's the best team in college basketball?
Best team in college basketball, the Indiana Hoosiers.
Duke.
Yeah, it's Duke.
Are they? Are they the best
right
team?
now?
Yeah, right now I would say they are, and they probably will be in March too. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Who's the best coach in college basketball right now, Brian?
Oh God.
Stunk you. Mike, you still on?
Yes, I am. You told me to stay. You're talking about a sport, so I figured I'd wait till you start talking about golf.
There's a lot of good coaches in college basketball. The best coach, I don't know. You can easily say Krzyzewski because.
Wait. Mike, who's the best coach in college basketball?
John Beilein.
Who is it, Mike?
John Beilein.
Yeah, Beilein's a heck of an answer.
Put it like this: if I was an AD at a school and you told me I could have anybody to start my program, it would be John Beilein.
Over Jay Wright.
John Beilein.
Really? Wow. We haven't talked about that, Mike.
You never asked.
That's new news to me. You're a Jay Wright guy. You're a Big East guy. You're a Xavier guy.
No, I'm not. I'm an Indiana guy. I'm an Indiana guy. I was born an Indiana guy. I always liked Xavier as my second team, and then Bobby Knight got fired, so then I became a Texas Tech and a Xavier guy, and then Bobby Knight left Texas Tech, and I was just a Xavier guy until they got Archie Miller. I liked Archie Miller at Dayton. I thought he would bring back Indiana basketball to what Indiana basketball should be, and I think he is.
Okay. Brian, who's the best coach in college basketball?
I find it hard to argue with John Beilein. Jay Wright is very good, but there's so many good coaches in college. But I mean, there's guys that are doing great jobs with very little talent.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say this guy is the best or the other guy is the best. But there's a lot of really good coaches in college basketball. But John Beilein, what he's done with that Michigan program is
well,
is
and
pretty
what
impressive.
he did with West Virginia before that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they spend a lot of money.
He's right up there.
They spend almost as much money as Duke. Trust me.
Who does?
Yeah. Michigan.
Why do you have to be such a hater? He's never been busted for anything, just because you're jealous.
No, it's never cheating until you get caught. You're right. It's never cheating until you get caught. Then it's cheating. But then we get caught, it's cheating. But till then, Brian, well, we're going. Stay here, Mike. Are the Pacers for real? Can the Pacers get through the Eastern Conference and get a run at this?
Well, I don't know if they'll get through the Eastern Conference, but they're going to be, I think, one of the top 4 teams. They should have home court. They could have home court. So
they're cream of the crap. They're cream of the crap, then, is what you're saying.
Huh?
They're not going to win. They're cream of the crap.
Nobody said they were going to win.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be. I don't think they're going to win the Eastern Conference and go to the NBA Finals, but I think they could win a playoff series.
Who's going to win?
Maybe get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
I think this.
But
when you look at them, if everything broke out the way it was today, they'd play the Hornets in the first round. They're going to beat the Hornets. Then they would play the Raptors. I think they beat the Raptors because the Raptors are a team that we know is always great in the regular season. And then you put them in the conference championship against the Bucks or the Sixers or the Celtics. The Celtics are still the team that would worry me more than anybody because they still have the most talent.
Here's something I put out on Twitter yesterday, just as a question. Is now a time that the Pacers should try to trade for Gordon Hayward? I'm not saying that Brad Stevens would let him go, but he's coming off the bench. You're paying him a boatload of money. He's having some trouble figuring out how to play all the talent that he's got. Do you think he's available? And would it be worth the Pacers trying to get? Now that contract might be hard because you're going to have to pay some contracts at the end of this year if you're the Pacers. So it might be hard to fit that contract in there. But if I'm the Pacers, I make a run at him.
I really like Gordon Hayward, but this team's 26-12 and they play really well together. Who do you put him in over?
Well, you'd have to play him in Bogdanovich's place. You'd play him at a 3. Or you do like the Celtics are doing right now, and you bring him off the bench. But I just think he's going to eventually return to his form and be the player that he once was. I mean, he's just less than a year off. Well, just a little over a year from that horrific injury.
Yeah.
So I think he'll return to form. And I don't know.
The biggest question here is what do you got to give up? What do you got to give up? That I think is the big question. And
you've got guys playing on a the last year 1-year deal with the Pacers. I don't know. I don't know what you'd have to give up. Would a first-round pick be enough? I don't know.
I'd give up a first-round pick in a heartbeat.
Yeah, because you're going to pick deep anyway.
Yeah.
For Gordon Hayward, you would, really? Are you doing a first-round draft pick?
Yeah, he doesn't like Gordon Hayward. So
he's a quiet 20-point-a-game scorer. He doesn't. I've seen him play in person. The one Clippers game I went to with Woodson getting us tickets, I saw him play Utah, and he scored 22 points a game. I'm like, I didn't even know he was in a game. And the Clippers won the game handily. And it's like, I don't think he's an impact player.
So you don't think Hayward, if he comes in and averages 20 points a game, and you got Bogdanovic on the bench, you don't think that that's an impact? Because Victor Oladipo is probably, especially when you get to March, April, May, is the stud on this team. He doesn't have to be the stud. So if he puts up a quiet 22, you don't think that's worth your first-round pick? Which is probably going to be 25 or 26.
Yes, I do. Yes, Mike, I do. Because you're right. Because the talent in college coming out, it's a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get when you draft a college player. And Gordon Hayward is a proven commodity. So, yes, it would be a good pick. I retract.
I'm not saying that I don't even think the Pacers could do it with the contract situations that they have. But if it's possible, I think. Well, but they've got Oladipo signed to it. I mean, he's going to be a max guy if he's not already. You're going to have to sign Sabonis to a big deal. Miles Turner, they just got under contract for a reasonable contract. Darren Collison's going to be up at the end of the year. I mean, they've got contract. They've got some contracts they've got to address.
You damn well know they're going to bring Lance Stevenson back next year. He's going to dump the Lakers this year. They're going to bring him back. He's coming back.
not going to bring him back. They're not bringing him back.
Oh, hell. Mark my words. He will play in a Pacer uniform again before he retires.
Okay. No, they're not. Last thing they'll do is bring him back.
How can you not love Lance Stevenson?
This is from the same guy. I don't like Lance Stevenson because he plays like an idiot. I mean, I watched Game 7 against the Heat a few years ago that he cost him by himself. You just like him because he runs around, he flaps these gums like you used to, only he has some athletic ability.
All right, NBA. Who's
I tried to end that like Brian? Howard Cosell used to when he was talking down to Dandy Don. Did I do pretty good, Brian?
I like it.
Who's the best team in the East, Brian?
Boston.
Yeah,
I will say this though: Toronto with Kawhi Leonard is a different Toronto than what we've seen in the past. Now, chances are he won't be in Toronto next year, but I think they can go. I think that's going to be a really, really dangerous team in the playoffs with Kawhi Leonard.
He's been a surpriser, hasn't he? I mean, he's done well. I mean, I think we all thought he'd be a cancer, where he came from, but he's done well with that team.
No, they're good. Pacers had him beat last week and let that one get away. But the Pacers are in Toronto, I think, next week, so we'll see, get another crack at them. But I like this Pacers team. I'm not saying that they should blow it up and start all over again by getting Hayward by any means, but I think this Pacers team's really good. And can they get to the Eastern Conference Finals? Yes. Past that, it'd be gravy. I still think that even though the scoring's been a lot more balanced, I still think that Oladipo needs a Robin, or he needs to be a Robin to somebody else's Batman. They need another stud.
I think Sabonis could do that at some point. I like Sabonis.
The guy that's playing really well that I was kind of down on for a while was Miles. No, well, him too. But Miles Turner's been playing great. Now he's got a broken nose now, and they're hoping it's not a concussion. He can play with a broken nose. But the last month he's been playing great, and if he continues to be that player, I mean, the other night Miles didn't play the whole game because he broke his nose. But that position between Miles and Sabonis, they have 40 points and 32 rebounds or something like that between them. It was unreal.
And the thing is this. We were talking last year during the NBA playoffs, Steve. We didn't like Nate McMillan. But obviously, Nate McMillan's got to be a good coach because it seems to me with the Thaddeus Youngs, the Bogdanoviches, the Turners, Collison, Sabonis, these guys are all getting better.
They're getting better, and they like each other. The chemistry, and that's Kevin Pritchard, the general manager of the Pacers, has done a marvelous job, as has Chris Ballard with the Colts, of putting together a locker room that really likes each other. The chemistry on that team is phenomenal. And now, the last few games, he had 22, I think, the other night, but Oladipo hasn't been scoring like he had to last year. They've been spreading the ball around. They're getting 30 to 35 assists a game, and other guys are scoring more. So the chemistry on that team is phenomenal, and that's something you really don't want to mess with.
Yeah, I was going to say that he's kind of starting to remind me a little bit of like a Phil Jackson, kind of a Zen master. What Jackson did with the Bulls was he just kept.
He let Michael Jordan coach the team, and he got out of the way, Steve.
Right, and he got out of the way. Exactly.
Yeah, he didn't coach the team. Michael Jordan coached the team. Michael Jordan ran the show. Everybody before that got fired because they tried to coach the team.
All right, but I'm saying I agree with Brian entirely. He's built a culture and a chemistry for the Pacers that is really working well, and that's why I would say Gordon Hayward. I don't know that I'd screw with what they got right now. I think they're okay. I mean, I don't know. 7 games, things happen in 7-game series, and let me see. Okay, Brian, West. West is like gunfight at the OK Corral out west. Who's good in the West? The Lakers gonna we get the LeBron factor. The Lakers gonna go.
I don't stay up late enough. I don't stay up late enough to watch the Western Conference. So you're gonna have to tell me.
Well, you're the genius, Mike.
Actually, the surprising team has to be the Nuggets. Right now, the Nuggets would have home field or home court all the way through the playoffs.
Gary Harris, another kid I coached. Yeah, Gary Harris, another kid I coached.
What about him?
Who actually was probably a better football player.
Yeah. My son hooked up with him for 250 yards in the game we lost up in Fort Wayne because our star quarterback broke his ankle because our idiot coach left the star quarterback in when we were up 50-0 on whoever we were playing. Our star quarterback broke his leg, compound fracture, on like the fourth last play of the game. My son had to come in and had never played varsity quarterback, had to run the team the next year, and he and Gary Harris hooked up for 250 yards, and we lost because our idiot running back fumbled the ball on the 20-yard line by himself. He was 10 yards past everybody. That's it. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. But
you're not bitter or anything.
It was great.
All right.
What?
The other thing, Steve, is you brought up the Lakers. You know, right now they're barely even a playoff team.
Are they? I don't even know what their record is.
21-16. They are two games over to ninth place. Kings. The Spurs are in eighth.
Where are the Clippers? Are the Clippers ahead of them?
Yeah, the Clippers are 6. Actually, they're not ahead of them. They're tied, but I guess they got the tiebreaker for some reason right now.
Okay.
But
well, everybody seems to think that Kawhi Leonard. Everybody seems to think Kawhi Leonard's going to be with the Lakers next year.
Might be. They got enough.
So Brian, out west, who's good out here? Is it still Golden State? Is it still Golden State?
He just told you he doesn't watch the West that much. Jeez.
I don't stay up that late.
Yeah.
But I would think Golden State's still the team to beat.
Yeah. Steve, you got James Harden, the Houston James Hardens. You got the Trailblazers have a good record. The Thunder are a good team. The Nuggets have the best record, but the Warriors are still the favorites.
Yeah. See, I hate the NBA. I have no use for it.
Then why did you bring it up?
Because we have Brian Hammons. He's a sports genius.
Who doesn't stay up to watch the NBA? All right, what's your next topic, Steve?
My next topic is Brian. The PGA Tour starts this week in
I'll be back, guys.
This is where you spent 25 years. Brian might go away. Stay close so we can Twitter you back. I'm going to let Brian address the changes in the PGA Tour, address Tiger Woods, address Phil Mickelson, address the stupid shootout crap they did, and they've re-signed it for 3 more years. Brian, start talking. PGA Tour.
Wow, that's a lot of topics to cover. I think 2019 though, really, Riz, is going to be a terrific year in golf. A lot of really good storylines. Obviously, the number one storyline is Tiger. What's he going to do for an encore? He won obviously late last year, and then when you look, the next level is, can he win another major? And when you look at the major championship venues, he's won in 3 of the 4. Augusta National, obviously. He's won at Bethpage Black, which is where the PGA Championship will be held, which will be held in May this year. And he's won at Pebble Beach, which is where the U.S. Open will be. So,
we were there. Remember, we went there. Remember,
we were there.
We were both there. I worked for the Golf Channel. I got to run for them. I got to go get you coffee and makeup and stuff for you all the time. And I had a golf cart. I had a golf cart in the past. Are you kidding me? I was like a log cabin. And remember, what was it? Days In? We got the cookies every night in the calamari.
Oh, the calamari. Yeah, Monterey is terrific.
I scared the crap out of your people because I made fake parking passes. I saw parking passes. I think I pissed off and scared the crap out of your producers.
yeah. Don't give away our secrets. But
yeah, exactly. Well, you can't do it anymore. They have holograms now. That was the last year they didn't do holograms. So, all right. So I think let's start with the monkey on the court, Tiger. Can he win a major this year? Is he back, or was it just a fluke? What do you think?
No, I think he can, because, like I mentioned, he's won on 3 of the 4 major venues that they'll play in 2019. So, and then Royal Portrush is unknown to everybody. They haven't played in Northern Ireland for 68 years. So, but that's supposed to be a great golf course. So, he can win a major.
What's his best chance? Is it Augusta?
No, I don't think so.
No, really?
Probably. He hasn't. I don't know if he's won there since they Tiger-proofed it. I don't think he has. I don't think he's won at Augusta National since they grew the second cut and, what they called then Tiger Proof Augusta National.
Tiger Proofing, yeah, I'm aware of that.
But he's been close. But I would say, it depends on how he's driving it. It's hard to win a U.S. Open. It's hard to win at Bethpage unless you're driving it straight. And if he's driving it straight, then yes. But if he's driving it crooked, then I'd say Augusta National's probably his best shot.
In your eyes, what's the weakest part of his game? Is it his driving, or is it his iron play, or his putting? What's the weakest part of his game?
I think, I haven't talked to him recently, but from what we've seen. Well, what we've seen, I would say,
yesterday, but I didn't call. So.
If he's driving it straight, I would say that's the biggest key is his driver. If he's putting the ball in the fairway, then he's going to be tough to beat. His iron play, his putting is going to be fine. I'm anxious. It's too bad he's not playing this week in Hawaii because I'd like to see him play that golf course.
He's eligible, and he could play if he wants.
Oh yeah, he's eligible. Yeah, he just doesn't want to.
He's eligible. He won the tour championship, right? So he's eligible.
Right, and he normally doesn't. He normally doesn't start his season until they get to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Not for a long time, but.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of other good storylines too. Brooks Koepka's going for his third straight U.S. Open. Nobody's ever done that. And Brooks Koepka, people still don't consider him a great player, but he's won back-to-back U.S. Opens. He's the number one ranked player in the world. But when you ask people, name the best golfers in the world, most of the time they don't mention Brooks Koepka. It's real interesting.
Okay, so for Koepka, what makes him so good on U.S. Open venues? Because we know the setup the U.S. Open does. They're tight. They're narrow fairways. They're terrible rough. What makes him a good U.S. Open player?
He's long and he's straight. So, that's a good combination. If you put it in the fairway, at the U.S. Open, you're ahead of the game. But if you hit it long and you're in the fairway, you're way ahead of the game. So, and he's unflappable. I mean, the guy's got, nothing seems to bother him. So it'd be interesting to see, if he can continue his, not just at the U.S. Open. I mean, to ask a guy to win 3 straight is unbelievable. But if he can maintain his spot at the top of the world rankings, then how he'll handle that. Because a lot of guys don't like being I remember David Duval, when he was the number one ranked player in the world, hated it. Because, like he said, he told me, he said, you know what, all of a sudden, I'm the number one ranked player in the world, and everybody expects me to be an expert on everything. They'll ask me about politics and movies, and he said, I just play golf. He hated that spotlight. And, it'll be interesting to see how Brooks Koepka handles it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Who's the best player in the game going into this year right now? In your mind, you've done it for 30 years, 25 years with the Golf Channel. Who's the best player in the game right now? Is it Johnson? Is it who else? Who's the best player?
Well, if you go by the world rankings, it's Brooks Koepka. But Dustin Johnson's right there at number 2. I think the guy that's going to have a resurgence this year.
Who can win? Who's a player that can win on any given week on any given course?
Dustin Johnson.
Dustin Johnson, yeah.
Oh yeah, and Tiger, if he's on his game. But the guy I think that's going to have a resurgence this year is Jordan Spieth, because he had a poor year last year, and surprisingly it's been his putting that has held him back, which is not something you'd ever say about Jordan Spieth previously. But I think he'll have a resurgence. So, you look at the world rankings, he's 17th in the world, and you'd never think that. But I think you'll see him back inside the top 10 this year. He's not going to struggle for long, especially with his putting. That's something he'll get fixed. But
here's a question we started toying around with even on our show a little bit. Does he stay with his caddy? Because they've got a pretty tight relationship. But you know how that relationship goes. For guys, they start looking for reasons. They start looking for things to blame something on. Does he stay with his caddy? Because I know they've got a very tight relationship.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why he wouldn't. We've seen caddy-player relationships a lot longer than that one has lasted. I mean, in fact, Zach Johnson just fired Damon Green after I don't know how many years they were together.
Yeah.
So those two have split up. But yeah, I don't think there's any issues there. I mean, those two right? Michael Greller and Jordan get along great. Jordan credits Greller for a lot of his success, so I don't see any problems there.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, how he was the teacher in school and, came out and just showed up and they got paired up. Didn't they get paired up, like, unintentionally at some junior amateur event or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was at the U.S. Junior. He caddied for him.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
That's great. Okay, let's talk about we moved the TPC to March, and we changed kind of the lineup around. So is the TPC a major or not, Brian?
Well, it's the best field of the year. It's played on an iconic golf course. Well, it's the best field of the year, played on an iconic golf course. So in those regards, it's a major championship that just doesn't have the title. Now, will it ever have the title? I doubt it. I mean, the LPGA has 5 or 6 majors, and the Champions Tour has, I think, 5 majors, but I think they just have 4. But you can't. I don't know if you can add another one. It's the players consider it a major, and they get the same benefits as far as the length of their exemptions.
What is it, a 5-year or 10-year exemption? Once you win that?
It's 5. All the majors are 5 now, and the players is 5.
Did it used to be 10?
And I think the when it gets to Hall of Fame voting, I think that the voters give the players just as much weight as they do a major championship. I mean, you see a Fred Couples get into the Hall of Fame. He has just one major championship, but he has 2 players.
Right.
I don't think he gets in if he just has the one major.
Yeah, and we both played that course. That's a hell of a golf course to play. I mean, Pete Dye just celebrated like his 93rd, 94th birthday this weekend or this past week, and he still lives on Kirby Steak back in Carmel where you live and things like that. I mean, it's one of the coolest golf courses you'll ever play. Mike, what's your question? Hang on, Mike,
I have a question.
Mike, what's your question?
And hopefully this wasn't asked while I was gone, but it's a brilliant question, so I didn't figure Steve asked it. Brian, what do you think the introduction of federal gaming guidelines, do you think that we'll see a bump in the tour as gamblers begin to realize how much potential action is available during a round?
It's the way the gambling, and I don't want to throw him under the bus at all, but when Scott Van Pelt was at the Golf Channel, he would go on and bet.
And wait, before that, you know what? I got that freaking autographed basketball from Bobby Knight, and he never thanked me for it. And you know what I had put on that ball for him? I think I can repeat it on the air. Well, I can't. It's internet. But I got him an autographed basketball from Bob Knight, and he never thanked me for that basketball. Idiot.
Did Knight sign it or did his secretary?
That's what I was going to ask.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Because we all know that happened a lot.
Yeah,
but anyway,
it happened more times than not. Exactly.
But anyway, you could go online at these sites, and they would have head-to-head matchups every day. Let's say it's Zach Johnson against Stuart Appleby. And you go on there and you could say, okay, well, I think Zach Johnson will beat him that day. And you could go on these head-to-head matchups every day, and he'd sit back there and do that. And it was kind of fun to follow. And you're right, though, because there's so many different ways to bet in golf, and I think it could have the same effect that gambling has had on the NFL, except you can bet on a lot more things. I mean, you can bet on every head-to-head matchup that they have posted. And it's pretty cool the way that you can do that, and I think it could be very beneficial for golf. And they're smart enough to realize that.
Okay, so that leads me into the debacle that we just watched. We all paid $19.95 for the Tiger Phil crap.
Hey, actually, nobody paid $19.95 for it because everybody got it free because of, what was it?
Yeah, I'm the idiot that paid $19.95 for it. I don't know. I haven't seen my cable bill. I don't know if I got billed for it or not.
You probably got reimbursed.
My wife pays the bills, so I don't know. But Brian, what's your take on that idiot, stupid thing.
Well,
I think you're my opinion.
Yes, you did. I think you're going to see more of it. I think it'd be kind of.
They've already re-upped for 2 more years, haven't they? They've already signed for 2 more years.
I don't know if those two I don't think have committed to play, but you might see others.
Yeah, they did. They signed a contract that's 2019, 2020. They're doing it again.
Well, I don't have a problem with it. Although I would like to see him expand it. Let's see Justin Rose against Dustin Johnson, or Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, 2 good friends.
Justin Rose.
Let's see a team event where it's Justin Rose and.
Don't need any more crappy team events.
Well, I'm just saying 2-on-2. No big deal. But it's not going anywhere. I mean, people are going to spend the money. They're going to do it.
Yeah, and I still have it on DVR because I paid to DVR the thing. So I've got it. I think what they should have done was said, you have to make a bet on every hole. So it's on every hole, you have to come up with some kind of bet. And what they did was there were only like 5 or 6 challenges or bets in the whole tournament. What happened was they both got serious about beating each other. And it turned into just a golf match and not a made-for-television event where, you wanted to hear them. They didn't already talk to each other after the first 2 or 3 holes. They all got focused on, I remember one hole they were both within 5 feet of each other in a bunker, from a fairway bunker on the right side, I remember. And I thought about, right now, Tiger says, 100,000, I can get it closer to the pin than you can from this bunker. And, they didn't do that. They just were all focused on winning rather than what I thought. If you're going to do a pay-per-view and do a made-for-TV event, you got to be Hollywood. You got to be real. So you're an actor at this point in time, more so than you are an athlete. They're great golfers. We get that. But I think it flopped entirely. What's your thought? Was it successful to you?
Well, I think you're right. They needed to have more side action, and I think they'll tweak it. And I think they definitely have to tweak the television production because there was way too much talking over the 2 players that were mic'd. I don't care if Tiger's giving out recipes to Phil. I want to hear it. I don't want to hear the announcers talking over the players that are talking. So, and that's you could do that with one guy, one announcer saying, "Here's Tiger's second," and then just lay the hell out. There's way too many people involved.
Rich Lerner.
Well, Rich wasn't on the broadcast, but there was.
You can't say anything. I know you can't say anything. Don't worry about it.
But there were too many people on the broadcast, and they were all wanted to get their say in and analyze what they don't. This isn't something you need to analyze. We can see what's going on. Let's hear what they have to say. So, and I think they'll tweak that going forward. But it was fun. I didn't have a problem with it. What else is there to do on a Thanksgiving weekend?
No, I watched it, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, I have it on tape, and I kept it and DVR'd it, and it was fun. But I think it just got underproduced. I think it just didn't get produced right. I think you should have said, you guys got to make this more fun and exciting for the fans who are paying money to watch this and do this. This isn't like a free golf thing on NBC with Johnny Miller or, Sir Nick Faldo. He's not a sir in the United States. He's a sir in England, so don't call him sir here. And that's my other question. Okay, last question I'm going to ask. Mike, are you still on?
I'm here.
He's not on. He's gone.
I got a question
after you
asked
on here. Jeez.
All right, Mike, Brian, why in the world do people think that we have to listen to British people to talk about golf for us in America? My last
That's a good question.
I mean, on the Golf Channel now, half the people there are British. It's like, do we have this fascination that what is the deal with that, Brian? If you don't want to address it because you're an announcer, I get it. Don't address it. But it drives me crazy that we think we have to have British people talk about auto racing and golf
I can't answer that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I do have a question for Mike.
Yeah.
I do have a question for Mike. How in the hell long is this show?
I don't know.
We're done.
I don't know.
We're done.
Jeez.
My
this is the
God.
longest show.
I've done Ryder Cups that last shorter than this show.
I know.
Okay, we're done.
This is like that World
Brian?
Series game between the Red Sox and the Dodgers. I got up this morning, started the show. I left. I came back 7 hours later, and you guys are still talking. And I would like to say this. I didn't hear the rest of the golf part, but I'm sure Brian will agree that probably my question was the best one he was asked today about golf.
No doubt. I love talking to Brian Hammons. Brian and I have been friends for a very long time, and we play a lot of golf together. And I always learn something when I talk to Brian. And so I apologize. Mike, wrap the show up and get Brian. I'm sure he's got to go pee too. We're all pushing 60.
All right. Well, we don't have to pee. We have to dribble, then pee, then dribble. All right, guys. Remember, you can catch us every day on Survive in Advance. Tomorrow you can catch our college football preview show on the Alabama-Clemson game. So make sure you check that out there. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Brian Hammons, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where this show never ends.